if I'm reading off my notes, that's why. Okay, so we're going to connect kind of everything Ryan just talked about and talk about nutrition. We can't necessarily talk about what he just talked about without bringing in the nutrition aspect of things. So nutrition, we can talk about a lot of things in nutrition. We could get into the weeds. Not looking to get into the weeds of nutrition today. One-on-one we can do that. But we're going to talk about just some specific things. Ryan and I kind of sat down and talked maybe what would be a good topic to actually talk about today. And we came up with something that I'm super excited just to inform you guys about. I know Abby was telling you kind of the ingredients that she made these snacks in. And one of the parameters we gave her was not to use any seed oils. So today we're going to kind of talk about inflammation and kind of how our American diet is today and the use of lots of seed oils in our food and how that can cause some chronic inflammation, which can cause chronic disease, chronic illness, things of that nature, okay? So when we're talking about fitness, obviously Ryan just kind of went over that. The bottom of that pyramid is nutrition. Every time I write, that's not very big. Every time I write on the whiteboard, I feel like I want some more stuff.
That's right.
Right, so nutrition is at the bottom. We have to pay attention what we are putting inside our bodies, okay? So Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, so we've been talking about the CrossFit methodology, just kind of keeping it going. Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, put fitness in 100 words. So who's read Fitness in 100 Words? That's what it's called. Okay, Fitness in 100 Words. The first sentence how he defined fitness starts with nutrition and how to eat. So what it says is fitness, eat meats. That's the first part of it. Eat meats. Yes, protein. Eat vegetables. Okay? Eat meats, vegetables. Nuts and seeds. Okay? Eat meats, veggies, nuts and seeds. Some fruit. Little starch. And no sugar. Okay, so fitness in 100 words, how Greg Glassman put it. Eat meats, veggies, nuts, and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. Okay, we're going to talk about no sugar here. I would say this is more of like our added sugars. Okay, so when I talk to my clients, this is one of kind of our core principles here, and I usually tell them, hey, when I tell them this definition, I say little starch and minimal sugar. So talking about added sugar there. Okay, any questions so far on fitness in 100 words? I would encourage you to go read it, okay, because it is a really great definition. So he starts out with what we should eat and then how we should eat. So the next part of it is keep levels to support exercise, but not body fat. And then it starts to talk about the deadlift and all those functional movements that we just talked about, okay? So, nutrition is our core, our foundation, how we should eat. And we're going to tie in these things to mostly what we're talking about today. So I have 3 core nutrition principles that we talk about here in the gym. I talk to with my clients. Really the first 3 things we talk about. Number 1 is whole foods first. Okay? You can just call it out. How would you describe a whole food?
Not processed.
To what? Everybody says not processed. What did you say?
Out of the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that's real, out of the ground, out with the label, things like that. Yeah. We'll kind of tie that one in. This next one is balance. We're not going to really talk about this one today, but it's a good one to note. whole foods first, balance, pairing protein, carbs, and fats with meals and snacks. That's mostly to make sure we get all those macronutrients in that we need, support for exercise, right? But also for our blood sugar balance. And make sure we're pairing all those three things together. The next one is what we're going to kind of hone in on, okay, is limit amount of ultra processed carbs, this is a long one, and added sugar you consume, okay? So limiting the amount of ultra processed carbs and added sugar. Those are the three core nutrition principles that I start with first with my clients. When I take a look at their food and their meals, these are the things that I'm looking at first to see how can we start to put in some whole foods first, okay? Are there any veggies in their diet? If not, how can we start to add in some veggies to their diet? Are they eating sufficient protein? If not, how can we make a plan to incorporate protein at meals and snacks? Of course, it's on an individual basis, right? What the amount that Mary eats might not be the amount that I need to eat. The amount that my husband needs to eat, it may not be the amount I need to eat. So it's a very individualized basis, but these are kind of the top three things if we're looking at it on a broad spectrum. I'm going to pause there. Any questions that you have about these three core nutrition principles or anything coming up for you? Nothing? Okay, yeah.
When you say limit amount of ultra processed, like, can you put that in a percentage or some kind of a frame that way?
I can't necessarily put it in a percentage, but if we were talking about added sugar, I can kind of, in a broad term, because those can kind of go together. If we're talking about added sugar, for women, we don't want to have no more than 24 grams of added sugar per day. For men, it's 36 grams of added sugar per day. I will say, most, on a kind of a broad term globally, people are consuming over 70 grams plus of added sugar a day. Way over the recommended amount. So if that helps you, if somebody's consuming a lot of ultra processed foods, packaged foods, they're definitely consuming way more added sugar.
I would say maybe to that too, Chris, you guys answer that question like how much processed food.
Mm-hmm.
I think the 80-20 rule probably works pretty well here.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like if you're 80% eating what Liz is talking about, and then 20%, maybe eating more like a processed food or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably a good range. Now, it doesn't make that processed food healthy in that moment, right?
Right.
But if you're truly following 80-20, I think you're probably in a pretty good spot. The trick is that most people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a very real psychological phenomenon. We tend to remember the things that we do well, and we tend to forget the things we don't do well, right? And whatever that matrix is that we're running through our mind. And so oftentimes, unless you're tracking, it's hard to know if you actually hit 80%.
Yeah,
80%,
tracking
80% is like, I ate really great except for 2 meals out of the week.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So yeah, paying attention to labels, things like that. Yeah.
You mentioned balance. I imagine you're going to probably go into more depth about like ratio of carbs to fats to proteins, or
Not
is that-
necessarily today.
Okay.
We're not going to talk about that one
Okay.
today. Yeah.
When you say balance, you just mean getting enough of those nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
At all meals. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to say, because you're specifically calling out added sugar,
Mhm.
naturally occurring sugar in fruits, I
Mhm.
mean, do you get a lot of times where people avoid potentially like very healthy things because it has sugar in it, like fruit?
Yeah. Or I will say I've had people come to me and tell them that in recent years they've done something where somebody says like fruit's bad and you shouldn't eat fruit, which I think that's bogus. So to answer your question, I don't say I necessarily have people that avoid it, but I have had to help people and clients reframe their beliefs around certain things like that. Yeah. Did that answer?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Great. Yeah.
How does all of this play into calorie consumption?
Be more specific. Yeah. So I think you're kind of answering your own question, because I would say it just depends.
Okay.
That's my question for a lot of things. It really just depends on your goal
Okay.
of the calorie consumption and what you're wanting to achieve.
Okay.
You know, so if somebody came to me and they're wanting to increase their muscle mass, I have to first look at how much are they eating, are they under eating, and if not, we have to slowly increase either portions or really look into their counts.
And how would you say, like, because I feel like it can be difficult, like, if you're wanting to increase your protein but not also increase your fat. I guess keeping it, well, I think I'm answering my question.
I love it. That's what I try to do.
Like, it's better than, like, packaged protein, because I feel like I gain a lot of weight, like, consume, like protein snacks versus, like, chicken. Or,
Like a whole food
leaner
source.
protein source that has less calories.
Yeah. Did you answer your question? Or like what? Just a little caveat, if this helps you. So a little caveat here. I didn't really plan on talking about it, but I think it's good to note. I think before, a lot of times we want to just go ahead and jump to like, how many calories should I be eating? What should my macro splits be? So I think for the average person, we can start first with just, hey, what does my portion of my plate look like? You know, instead of trying to count, because that can be overwhelming. So what I teach most of the time, these are flip-flopped. Okay, so half your plate in non-starchy vegetables. Okay, fourth of a plate in a complex carbohydrate. Fourth of your plate in a protein. If we start there first, having balance, then you will kind of be in the realm of what you need to be eating. Okay, because most of the time, flip-flop. Most clients that sit across from me in our sessions, I'll ask them, I'll show them this, say, hey, show me kind of what your plate normally looks like now. Well, carbs probably over here, maybe like a little bit of vegetables over here, and protein here. Can anybody resonate with that? No judgment, because Case is like, yeah. Literally, y'all, every dinner I cook, like, Case will sit down, protein, and like a bunch of rice, and I'm like, where are your veggies? Put them in the bowl. He's like, oh, dang it. Okay, so is that helpful?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I'm really thinking about, like, I really like potatoes and cooking them in the air fryer. Oh, maybe that's, like, kind of lopsided.
All right, y'all. So, moving on. We're going to talk about omega-6s and omega-3s. This is kind of where we're going to spend the bulk of our time together. Me and Ryan can kind of answer whatever questions you have here. So, omega-6s, omega-3. All right, quiz time. Which one of these are we over-consuming over the other? If you said omega-6, you're right. Yes. Who can kind of, off the top of their head, who can give me an example of things high in omega-6s? No. That would be some omega-3s. Fatty fish. Now, I will say both of these are good. Omega-6s, there's healthy omega-6s, okay? But then there's some things like found in ultra-processed foods, okay? Those packaged foods. Most omega-6s are found in your seed oils. So things like sunflower oil, canola oil, safflower oil, all those seed oils that you'll find if you go over from a packaged food, and it's probably in that ingredient label, okay? So, kind of the reason we wanted to talk about these, we're over-consuming omega-6s because we're over-consuming on these ultra-processed carbs and added sugar, causing inflammation in our body. Inflammation is good. There's good and bad inflammation, okay? If we get a cut on our hand, our body needs to respond and heal, and then it kind of turns off. chronic inflammation, the bad inflammation kind of stays turned on. And over time, that's what causes things like high blood pressure, all the chronic diseases, okay? So, like I said, omega-6s are good. They're found in seeds, nuts and seeds. See how we're getting to all these? Talked about meats, veggies, nuts and seeds, they are. So the thing about omega-6s is they're cheap, they're mass produced, okay? And so it's easy for our society, everything for them to be added into all of those ultra processed foods. Okay, that's why, it's hard to read a label without finding one of those seed oils on the label. Okay? Now, who is in the habit? I actually taught a college nutrition class on Thursday. I got to teach some college kids, which was really fun. It was really awesome. I asked them, we talked about nutrition labels, how to read a label. I asked them, is anybody in the habit of reading nutrition labels? A lot of them actually raised their hand. And I was like, oh, that's really great. And I asked them, okay, what are you looking at when you read a nutrition label? Why are you going and turning around a food and looking at the label? Like, I want to hear what they're looking for. A lot of them said, like, what's in the ingredients, the protein amount. So I would love to hear from you guys. If you read nutrition labels, what is it that you're specifically looking at and interested in? Yeah.
Protein in no seed oils.
Okay. Yeah.
Protein in no seed oils.
Do you find that it's difficult to find something with no seed oils? Yeah. Anybody else?
She said no added sugar.
No added sugar? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, why is that important to you guys? The no added sugar, no seed oils, high protein. Why is that important? What I'm talking about? Yeah.
Gains, I give them gains, baby.
Gains and feel good while doing it.
Gains, let's go. Let's get strong.
So kind of the reason why, okay, there's a refining process that happens when these seed oils are put into these packaged foods. The refining process is what strips away anything that's beneficial in there. Okay, so there's really nothing beneficial about that. All it really does is, if eaten in high amounts, cause that inflammation. Okay. So what does this do? This leads to an imbalance of these two. Okay. So most people, I'm not sitting up here saying that I have nothing in my pantry that is not ultra processed. I gave Case like a fig bar earlier, and package has canola in it. So like none of us are immune, right? Just like Ryan said, like that 80-20 rule. In my household, it's important for us to eat whole foods first, though, and that's my priority. And so if sometimes I have something that has, one of those seed oils in it, it's like, okay, it can't be perfect, but we can start to become aware of the effects it can have if you're eating out a lot. If you're eating a lot of fried foods, things like that, you're probably eating a lot of seed oils. And over time, when eaten in large amounts, that is what is going to cause that chronic inflammation. Does that make sense? So I'm not up here saying like, you're bad. If you're like eating something packaged, I'm not judging you. So there leads to imbalance. We want to be at a 3-to-1, right? 3-to-1 ratio. Okay, so however many milligrams omega-6, we want to have that of omega-3. Yeah.
A couple questions. Omega-6 and omega-3, are those fats, or those are?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they will.
Fatty acids.
Fatty acids. Okay, so the 6 is.
Yeah.
You want 3-to-1 with that.
Yes.
Another question was,
Yeah.
in terms of the seed oils, canola oil as an example, are there other, it's not going to just say seed oils, it'll say
Yeah.
canola oil, what else?
Yeah, so there's like soybean oil, safflower oil, gosh, I'm going to blank in, but
You're gonna run across are gonna be
canola oil and soybean, yeah.
Not include all of those.
Mm-mm.
Because
Yeah.
I like all of them.
all of those still linolenic acid.
Yeah.
So it's still not something I would make a ton of fats out of, but it's definitely on the better side.
Like things like avocado oil.
Well, I'm Italian, I gotta get my blood.
Yeah, coconut oil.
Not to too much, but I think here can be a good rule of thumb. If it's a food that is naturally high in fat in its whole food form, probably going to be a little bit better option. Like think about corn oil, right? You know how many kernels of corn you have to compress, and they don't even compress it. It's not compressed. It's a chemical process they extract the fat from. Corn is not naturally high in fat. If you ate a kernel of corn, neither are soybeans, neither is canola, right? That the process that it has to go through to strip that much fat out is pretty intense, right? So olives are naturally high in fat.
So good.
Like if you ate them in their whole form.
Yeah.
Right? So are avocados, right? So is coconut, right? And so that can be like one filter you're running through. Another filter I think can be really solid is like fats that are solid at room temperature. So that's also can be a good place to kind of like filter ideas through. Like, is this something that's going to support my health or not?
Yeah.
Butter.
Butter. Yeah.
Yeah. Ghee, maybe if you want like a
Hey, backing up just a minute.
Yeah.
What exactly do you mean by chronic inflammation? I mean, what are we talking about?
Yeah. So that is Ryan can maybe speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, so, like Liz was saying, like, you have acute inflammation, like this, you get a bee sting, you want that inflammatory response. Chronic inflammation would be like, it's hard to sometimes measure it, but or see it, because it's not necessarily on the outside, but like, inflammation on the arterial walls, right, cardiovascular system, inflammation in certain ligaments and tendons and joints, stuff like that. So that's
So it just stays turned on instead of.
it just stays at this elevated
Yeah.
level. Right?
It's your antibodies, attacking the body without.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a histamine response, but like, yeah.
If there's no threat to the body,
Yeah.
it's still kind of on. Yeah.
And that's where you can see that manifest in maybe a little bit on your genetic predisposition, but you can see that manifest in like heart disease, or it could be like, joint pain or gut issues.
Fatigue even.
Fatigue,
Yeah.
right, those kinds of
I see a couple hands up. Yes.
I can't quite hear you, so which is the 3 and which is the 1?
So omega-6, 3 to 1. Now I didn't define omega-3s yet. I'll get to. I think somebody else had their hand raised. Yeah, I'll get you in a second. But omega-3s are we can't make these on our own, so we have to get them from our food. It's harder to get them from our food these days, though. Okay. So what are omega-3s? These are like fatty fishes. Okay, wild caught salmon. Who's a fan of sardines? Ryan comes up in here sometimes with his can of sardines, but he's getting his omega-3s.
That's right.
Okay?
If anyone knows me, knows I've talked about fish oil to somebody.
Yes.
You're like, yeah, he's talked about
Fish oil is one of the only supplements. I don't push many supplements, but fish oil, if you're not on a good fish oil, like start taking a fish oil. Okay? Things like flax seeds, chia seeds, those types of seeds we can start adding to your diet to get more omega-3s. So we don't get enough of these. We get I think the ratio is like up to 10 to 1, even 20 to 1, if you read the research. So we're getting way too many of these.
Omega-6s come from like fast food, processed food? Okay.
You're getting all of those seed oils.
They're both considered essential.
Yes.
Like, so if you see essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, all that means is it's stuff you have to consume. Your body can't synthesize it on its own. That's what it means. It doesn't mean it's what it needs. It means it's what needs to be consumed. Both are essential. They both have to be consumed. Right? But to Liz's point, most people that are in the States are eating a lot of condensed omega-6s. It's a lot different eating a handful of peanuts versus eating, 2 tablespoons of peanut oil in your Chick-fil-A pack. They love to brag about how much peanut oil they eat. It ain't any healthier. Why are you saying this? It's not any better than canola oil that McDonald's uses, right? Okay, so, but you know what I'm saying? So you need omega-6s, but you're getting in a lot different ratios when you're eating some peanuts versus taking peanut oil.
Yeah.
Does the same apply to like almond milk, almond butter, peanut butter?
That's a good question, Danny. I'm not 100% sure. You probably could read the label and see. Yeah, I don't know for sure.
Because it's taking a little almost to make almond milk.
Right. And even there, I would say there's different. You can make your own almond milk, right? Which is one thing. It's not actually that hard, right? And versus
Well, there's a lot of gums and things
A lot of
in
gums
our
and stuff in, like,
our
the
almond milk
store.
these days too. Yeah.
yeah.
You can get in the weeds about all that stuff. Yes.
So
I just have a practical question.
Yeah.
So like avoid seed oils if you're going out to a restaurant. Do you normally just ask if this meal has seed oil in it and just avoid it?
No, honestly, I would say if you're going out, there was like, I don't know if y'all saw this on Instagram, but there was something that this guy was like, here's a healthy way to eat. Bring your olive oil. Did anybody see that? Bring your bottle of olive oil to the restaurant and ask them to cook with this. And I'm like, bro,
don't be that.
don't be that person. Do not bring your own oil to a restaurant and ask them to cook. It's better to just go and eat the food and not be anxious about it, enjoy it, and move on. Because being stressed and anxious about the oil will just cause that, stress response. If y'all haven't seen that video, it's insane. I was like, what? Oh, social media. Okay.
Hey Liz.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, the oils that are better to use are the ones that are solid in temperature, like the butters you use that.
Yeah.
So coconut oil, you can either get it solid, or you can get the liquid coconut oil. Is there one better than the other?
I've always bought the solid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if they.
I guess I'm
I don't
not
think they recommend. Yeah,
I don't know how they make it stay liquid.
yeah. I think it's just
It
always
has to be
solid.
some sort of chemical
Yeah.
process. I
Yeah.
go with solid.
Yeah, solid for sure. And then you can like melt it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so these two, I know this is kind of like high level stuff here, but these two are competing with each other. Okay, so to reduce inflammation in the body, kind of like tying everything together. If we're eating a diet high in omega-6, so high in ultra-processed foods, high in ultra-processed carbs, added sugar, if we're eating, lots of sweets, going out to eat a lot, things like that. Going out to eat is not bad, don't hear me say that, but there's a time and a place, and I would encourage you to take an overall look of how often you're eating these things, right? Because we need to be adding more omega-3s because that's what's going to help reduce that inflammatory response and reduce inflammation in the body. All to kind of to Ryan's point, when we were saying, hey, where are you on this wellness continuum, right? We're trying to stay as healthy as possible for as long as possible. And one of the things you can do is through our diet, the most important thing here is take a look at what we're overall consuming, how often, and what small things can we start doing to help lead a healthier lifestyle. And one of those things is adding in more healthy fats like omega-3s, okay? That will reduce chronic inflammation. Yes.
As far as an omega-3 supplement goes, do you have an opinion on vegan omega-3 versus a fish-sourced omega-3 supplement?
I don't
Do you
know
know anything about it?
No, I would have to do a little bit more, yeah.
I have an opinion on it, but
Ryan has an opinion on everything.
maybe not for the rest of it.
Just for me, I would say like a whole, not like a non-vegan.
Yeah.
That's what I would
So, like when you tip into the conversation on vegan, like there's an ethical conversation there. So I'm gonna stay away from the ethical conversation, but just say from the nutrition perspective, like those fats consolidate in the meat of a fish, so you're gonna get a more like a higher dosage volume out of fish oil. You could take an algae oil, which would be like so those are gonna both be, I believe it's EPA. Like there's different kinds of omega-3s.
It's EPA.
There's ALA and there's another one, I can't remember the name right now. So they're like, that's like your flaxseed oil, chia oil, like chia seed, like that's like your flaxseed and chia seeds, right? Your body has to convert that over to a bioavailable version of omega-3 versus taking fish oil is in the bioavailable version. So is algae oil, which is where the fish get the omega-3s from, that they condense in the tissue of a fish. Right, so the dosage is going to be more, right? So aside from the ethical conversation, I would say fish oil over an algae oil. If that makes sense, that's a great question.
What's another great one here?
Do you have a brand you recommend for
Fish oil?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we sell it here.
We sell it here. That is not our goal to sell.
No, it's not our goal to sell
We're trying to sell
fish oil.
$20 of fish oil today. That's why we're
Everybody's leaving with a bottle.
Everyone's waiting for the pitch. Where are the fish oil samples? Ooh, that's how gross that. I take it not capsulated. I just literally take it in liquid form.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. It really isn't.
It's really not that bad.
We have a brand here. It's called Innate Choice. We don't stock it, but you put your name on the tab, and then we just order it, and then so we don't stock it. But what I would say, broadly speaking, not all fish oil is made the same, right? So most of the stuff, if not all of the stuff that you could get at a Publix or Kroger or Walmart is all not worth your time. Just don't even buy it. And then you want to find, you're looking for a brand where they actually know the sourcing of the fish, right? So some fish oil is sold on the commodities market. It's just like the byproduct of catching fish. It's just a whole bunch of different fish put together. You don't know where it's coming from. But the really good stuff, the quality stuff, is oftentimes third-party tested. You can actually go to the batch number on the bottle. You can pull the batch number up, and you can actually find when that fish was caught, what ocean it was caught in, right? And you can track it all the way back to that. That's a good fish oil. If you're buying anything that's less than like $1 to $1.50 a serving, it's probably trash, right? So, yeah. So that's Innate Choice is a great brand. It's a brand that I didn't do all the research. A really good friend of mine is a chiropractor. It's a health nut. He did a lot of research on it. But also, there's other brands we like too. SFH is a great brand. You can buy that on Amazon. You can't buy that on
Also,
Amazon. You have to buy it.
I've gone over to Sprouts before, and the person over there was really informative. And she was able to tell me all that stuff, like where things are traced back to. So for Sprouts is good.
What's the brand?
Yeah, you probably need to go to Sprouts or Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Find a quality one. Yeah.
You want to make sure it's wild caught, right?
Yeah.
It's farm.
Yeah, and not farm caught, or not farm and wild caught, but also typically like lower feeding fish, like not fish that eat fish, right? So, because the mercury starts to gets condensed in the tissue. So,
What was the brand on Amazon?
SFH is a great brand.
SFH.
We used to carry it here years ago, but yeah, it's a great brand. And the Innate Choice stuff is great. You can get a capsule form or liquid form. I do a liquid just because I'm like, this
I do the capsule.
bioavailable as possible, baby.
You take it every day.
What?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah.
You take it every day.
I take it.
All
And you
right.
take more than you might realize. Like I would say, you need to be north of 1,000 milligrams. So look at the serving too.
Yeah, that's another thing. I never read the bottle. I finally read the bottle when it was like serving size was 4 capsules. I was taking like 1 capsule.
Yeah.
Dang.
I was getting frustrated that like my good fat levels weren't right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 capsules.
Forecast. Yeah, because you gotta get to 1,000. Yeah. So the serving is important. It's not a stimulant. It's not like you're not gonna take it one day and go, I feel amazing.
Have the feeling.
Yeah, it's not caffeine. It's like all of a sudden you feel great, you know. But over the long play, it's a solid. It's one of the best supplements. You should take nothing else if you're not taking that.
Yeah.
And it helps your joints when you're lifting and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Sure, because it's reducing inflammation.
Yeah. The same
So
thing we're
it can
talking about.
manifest in different places, in different people. That's why you hear omega-3, it helps your heart. No, it helps your joints. No, it helps your skin. Because it's manifesting in different places.
You said 1,000 milligrams a day, is that deal?
Yeah, there's some research that shows people who train hard, athletes, they bump that to 2 or even 3,000.
But I guess it also depends on how much omega-3s you're already consuming in your diet.
Yes.
Great point.
That's why it depends.
Yeah.
Is you kind of have to take that lens on really anything we're talking about, y'all. You really have to take the lens of it really just depends on what your lifestyle is, what how much, things like that. Yeah.
This might be a stupid question, but
No questions.
so I know that omega-3s are in like the fat from fish, but what about like the fat from steak or chicken?
Great.
Does that have omega-3s in it, or is that omega-6?
Yeah.
It can.
It can.
It can. So omega-3s are historically found in eggs, beef, fish, but again, because of the processing of food and the the States, a lot of that is either been intentionally bred out or unintentionally. So if you get like a cow that's only fed corn, right, its omega-3s are minimal, almost non-existent, right? Versus a cow that ate grass its whole life, right? That's going to be a lot different, right? So eggs are another great example. If you get white eggs from Kroger, the cheapest ones you can get, they have very little to no omega-3s. If you go to your local farmer, if you can find someone who grows eggs, like you're going to get a food that's pretty high.
Joel gets a lot of omega-3s.
Yeah, well, that's got chicken. Yeah, that's right. And a lot of that has to do with what the animal is consuming, right? Like Michelle and I used to raise chickens, so I can speak pretty confidently with this. Like chickens are omnivores; they eat anything. Like they'll eat themselves if they can, right? They're ruthless, right? But they would eat you if they were big enough and you were small enough. But they don't eat just corn, right? And or like the processed grain. Most of it's corn. We produce a lot of corn in America, subsidized. I don't want to be on that trail, but yeah. So a lot of those omega-3s aren't there. Same reason they're not there in cattle, or beef. But that's lots of foods that have omega-3s, to your point. But to Liz's talk is that's unless you're intentional, you're probably not getting that.
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of the processed seed oils and your ratios between.
In addition to that thing about beef, like you have to be not just like you can't just look at a package of like grass finished beef. Like anything that says grass fed, it just means it's finished.
It's just
with
finished.
grass.
You got it.
Right? And we have to go to like an itty bitty, like not a middle sized beef place, right? It's like, oh, we're local, we're here in Tennessee. That they're still gonna feed it 75% grain, and then they might finish it up with grass.
Right.
That's not gonna be much different.
To be honest, it is becoming difficult with our current food structure in America to get omega-3s
That's what I was gonna say.
from whole food sources, which
Yeah.
is why a supplement in this scenario. And we're not huge like Liz said, not necessarily big like supplement people, but like it's probably pretty helpful. Because you're trying to pull the ratio back in.
Yeah.
So you can do this two ways, right? Again, you gotta understand the statistics, right? You could cut omega-6s, but you can also boost omega-3s. You probably should do both to get the ratio back into line.
Are there any health conditions that would indicate you should not take fish oil? I know
I don't know the answer to
there were
that.
a few years
I'm
ago,
not sure.
the big thing came out again. At first, you know how they do things in the medical. At first, this is a great thing, you should take it, and then the next turnaround was like, maybe you shouldn't be taking this, So for a while, this breast cancer people take fish oil, and then they came out, I don't know how many years ago, and said, maybe you should be taking that. And I don't know if you guys have any take on that, those kind of, different health, whatever it might be, heart. I mean, we know it's good for heart, well, at least that's what Johnny's right now, but.
I don't know that I know the research there, but I would say there's a lot of those conversations you have to be aware of the influence of marketing on food.
Right.
The eggs are a great example. Like if you're at least my age or older, you've seen eggs go from being the best thing ever to being the absolute worst thing you can potentially ever.
And now they're
live in
coming back around
life.
again.
And so there's you have to be aware of that. And I would say stick to foundational principles, right? And this is a pretty foundational one in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's a take off of this third one. I think a lot of times with nutrition, people try to make it really complicated, but I find that we're missing a lot of these foundational principles first. Yes.
So how do we know how much omega-6 and 3 we're getting? I don't remember seeing that in a nutrition label. Is that information there, or is it something we have to?
Actually, you're right. You won't flip over a label and see,
Like
unless you're taking like a
omega-6,
fish oil, you will see that in there, but you're not going to see omega-6. So you're going to have that a little bit of research, but also, I mean, Liz can, I'm sure, help with some resources. I don't know if HSN has any resources that show, but you need to kind of know these seed oils are going to be high in omega-6s. So you're right, you're not gonna find it on a nutrition label, but you are gonna find sapphire oil or,
So just avoid the sources or cut them back rather than try and
Right.
put a number on it.
right?
Yeah.
And to make it,
Yeah.
make it simple, to Liz's point, honestly, it's 99% of all food that comes in a package. So it's like, if you're just like, hey, I'm just gonna try to minimize that, and I'm gonna go for the apple, right? Right.
If you just like pay attention to maybe like this next week, like bring more awareness to, okay, where am I eating out mostly, or what am I cooking with? Like, can I make a swap and, you know, get more of this? Then you're probably going to be reducing your omega-6s for sure.
Yeah,
But it's hard
you
to put
can
a
do
number
that
on
if
it.
you're cooking. Yeah, right. You can be like, hey, next time I cook something, I'm gonna use ghee, clarified butter versus the canola oil that's in my cabinet. That's a simple one, right? But then, yeah, if you're, otherwise, when you're at the, you know, it's hard to do in a restaurant. It really is.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough unless you like know that restaurant is sourcing food from certain places or doing certain things. It's really tough, but you can certainly do it in the grocery store. It's relatively easy. Just like follow that prescription. That was way back in the foundation of CrossFit. It was honestly pretty solid advice.
Yeah.
You know, just eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds.
Some fruit, little starch.
No starch, no sugar, minimal sugar.
Yeah. All right, y'all, that's pretty much all we had today. I know kind of that was an overview, but like I said, there's a lot of things we can talk about today, but hopefully I would take the next 3 or so minutes. I would love to hear from like, what is anybody's takeaway or anything you learned or something that stood out to you?
Or any other questions too?
Yeah, or any other questions? Yeah.
I'll just leave it. I'm not the greatest at applying this, but definitely like something that both of you touched on without realizing that you touched on. And this might help answer your question too about you have to pay attention to the facts and what behaviors and things like that. But it is a marketing tactic to try to narrow down that all of your that the results of whatever it is you're trying to get can honestly be traced back to one thing. Like that's a marketing tool. And I don't mean to like put a negative thought on that, but legitimately, like I would say maybe sugar is the only crazy outlier that we can all pick out and be like, this is bad. This is just bad. But the point being is that if you're talking to a doctor or if you're talking to a coach or if someone's like leading you to believe that, oh my gosh, the stress you're dealing with is really, it's because of the seed oil that you're having. It's impossible to narrow it down to that one thing. Because like you could go home and you could cook with much better oil in a bed full of pasta. And it's like, that's still not going to help you, you know? So it's so many other behaviors that are tied into it. And so the interesting thing about what Ryan was bringing up is that it's really just consistency and moving your body on a regular basis and tracking what you're doing and trying to make it better every time. And then for Liz, it's the first 2 steps. Like let's eat foods that don't have anything added to them or anything taken away from them. And let's balance it on a plate that gives me all the energy I need to do the right things. If I do that long enough, those 2 things, I'm going in the right direction on all the rest that goes underneath it. And it's such an easy thing for the market to quickly pick out all the other things and be like, we need to sell more of, nuts. So what we're going to do is we're going to market them and be like, this will solve all of your problems if you change this one thing in your diet and nothing else. That's just not true. And there may be some truth in it, but that's what makes it a good lie, And I would say on the restaurant side of things, I've worked in restaurants for so many years and there are no healthy restaurants. There are no healthy restaurants. It doesn't matter. Like every single one of them have to survive by buying products that will last and doing things to the products that will make them last. Otherwise, they go out of business. So anything that they don't sell needs to stay in the fridge and needs to survive. And so you're not eating good foods. That doesn't mean don't go out, but like don't eat out 80% of the time, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's good.
I know you didn't have this in your talk,
Yeah.
but when you're talking about labels, the first thing, and she's a professional label reader, takes us 3 hours to go to the grocery store.
Wow.
So we're looking at calories and we're looking at sodium.
Okay.
And you didn't talk about sodium, but is there any thoughts on the sodium content? Especially in processed food, it is off the chart. I mean, the sodium levels are, any fast food, any restaurant, the sodium is just, is there any thoughts on, should that be controlled? Or should we not even look at the sodium?
Just even in regular food, not necessarily.
Honestly,
processed.
I don't necessarily have because how my brain works is that if we're eating meats, veggies, nuts and seeds, some fruit, like I'm not worried about sodium because it's not necessarily falling into all of these things. Does that make sense? I don't know if I
Like
necessarily
it'll take care of itself.
It'll take care of itself. I don't necessarily I can't necessarily give you like a number. There's like a recommendation
Right.
recommended
Well,
about
I-
sodium.
I think a couple things there. So there's different kinds of salts.
Mhm.
Honestly, the science behind salt and high blood pressure is pretty weak, right? And it's not very good. There's different kinds of salt. There's a lot different between eating Himalayan pink sea salt
Mhm.
or pink Himalayan sea salt or not sea salt, Himalayan salt and MSG. But,
Mhm.
you know, what does MSG stand for again?
Monosodium
Glutamate or something like that, right?
Nice, Gino.
Thank you. And so in most processed foods, you have like MSGs, right? Now, when you're reading the top level labels, you're reading just sodium, but if you like dig into it further, right?
Bye, girl.
And
Thank you.
what is also attached to a lot of processed foods, the seed oils, the high sugar, these different things like that, refined sugar. So honestly, I don't think salt's the enemy,
Mm-mm.
especially if you're taking it in like a good form. You do put sea salt on your vegetables. That ain't the enemy, right? It may be the MSGs. I don't know about the science there, but so I don't.
And especially if you're in the gym, you need that sodium.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
There's actually
there's
some really
benefits.
interesting, like one of the companies we're getting ready to partner with is called Element. They do like electrolyte balance stuff. You guys have heard us talk about electrolytes. Right. There's actually some, I think, compelling arguments for increasing your salt intake, especially if you're training and working out regularly, not decreasing. That doesn't mean to eat tons of MSG though, right? But that kind of goes back to the foundational principle of, well, if you're eating this whole food stuff, right? Yeah, put salt up your food, right? Like it's good. It's probably not that's not the issue. That's a great question.
Yep.
As a coach and just opinions, what do you think about, like, you know, in terms of getting enough protein, just having protein bars and protein, you know, drinks like muscle milk and things like that? Just because, I mean,
Are you asking if is that a
I'm
good
asking,
thing to have a part of your diet?
do you recommend those as like a supplement to your normal diet if you're trying to get enough protein, or
Yeah.
is it like, you know what,
That's a
there's
good
a lot of,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say it depends. I always teach from the perspective of let's try to get your protein from more whole sources first. If you're having trouble getting enough protein from your whole food sources, then we can look at supplementation. And that would be some protein, some whey protein, a protein drink, a protein bar if necessary for convenience, right? But my teaching is let's try to get it from more whole foods first and then look at supplementation.
Yeah, if you're
Would you
if
agree?
you're like 100%. If you're like sometimes you just you really are like maybe you're not gonna eat here after training.
Yeah,
you're not
you
gonna
just
eat
need
for a
it.
while. You need
Yeah.
to take some protein in. But it's like on the order of like supplements. Like protein
Mhm.
used to be like when I first got into fitness 15 years ago. It was like the king. Like it's so you got protein. Everyone's and it's like we can get a lot of it from whole food. Most people can get all the protein they need from whole foods. But there can be times to supplement.
Mhm.
And then there's quality, supplement industry is like the Wild West. It's completely unregulated. People literally do whatever they want, just about. So not all protein's the same, right? It's kind of like that fish oil conversation. Quality proteins, some really, really good quality proteins you can source all the way back to the cow that whey came from, right? Who knows what whey comes from? Anybody? You know what whey comes from? Yeah, milk, right? It's the byproduct
Danny,
of making
there you
cheese. Michelle and I used to get our own raw milk, right? If you take raw milk, not pasteurized, raw milk, you just let it sit long enough, it'll ferment and it'll turn into old timers called curds and whey. Right? And it's curds on the bottom, it comes like cottage cheese, but it does not taste like cottage cheese. I'll tell you that. And the whey will rise to the top, and that's a liquid. Right? And you can literally take that and you can do drink it, it's the same. Now, that's whey concentrate, that's not concentrate, that's just whey protein. You can dehydrate it, turn it to whey concentrate, and you can take it to a chemical process and turn it to a whey isolate. Right? And that's like, now what you get in cheap proteins, it's just like the fish oil, it's on the commodities market. So imagine like a big manufacturing plant, all the cows from everywhere, all the milk goes there. They make the cheese, and they don't know where it's coming from. The byproduct of making that cheese is this leftover thing called whey, and then they have to get rid of it somehow, and they put it in cheap protein. Right? So, not all protein's made the same. So muscle milk, I would probably stay away from, and it's got a lot of sugar, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Right?
Like gums and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of gums and stuff. So so you should get a good quality protein supplement. But certainly it could be appropriate in certain situations.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting the amount of protein you want to get in.
Yeah. Most of the time I'll say like where to look at first. This is kind of the last thing I say. Where to look at first if you're having trouble getting more protein in. Look at how many, just adding in more ounces to your meals first. And then if not, going towards the supplement. Yeah. All right, y'all. I want to respect your time. It's a little after 1. If you have any more questions,
We'll hang out. Yeah.
we'll hang out for a second. But thank y'all for being here. I hope you learned something that you're going to take away. And obviously, like, I know sometimes this conversation, it's like it's a weedy conversation, right? We can really talk about a lot of things here, but we're just educating you guys here. And anytime that I'm working with a client, it's like, hey, sometimes people are scared to tell me what they're eating. I'm like, why? Don't be scared to tell me what you're eating. Like, there's no judgment on my part. It's like, I as a coach am not perfect in any way, but it's like, hey, we can make small changes over time, bring awareness to what we're currently doing, make small changes over time consistently, like Hayes was saying, and just become a healthier population overall. So I appreciate y'all taking your time, and yeah, if you have any
I'm going to
questions?
add one thing to Liz's ending.
Yeah.
If you want to do, like, I want people to have some tactical stuff. You're going to sum down what Liz talked about, minimize the sugar, minimize the omega-6s. But if you really want to see where you're really at, take a food diary.
I make all my clients take
Do it for a week.
food journal. Yep.
And just, even if you don't show it to anybody but yourself, right, just every time something goes in your mouth, just snap it real quick. Don't overthink it.
Mhm.
Yeah, but not just meal. Every time you drink a water or Coke or
Whatever, yeah. It's just to
today,
bring more
Finish your
awareness.
kids' breakfast.
Yeah.
just take a picture every time. And then don't change anything about what you're doing. And then look back
Yeah.
for a week and you'll have a pretty good data point.
Gathering data points.
That works a lot. I used to do that a lot.
Yeah.
Accountable to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It'll be real quick, real fast. But thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Hey, good turnout for a Saturday.
I know, wow.
Come on, let's go.
It's like nap time now.
We were like, snacks? Okay.
Yeah, everybody's so hungry. Abby, where's Abby?
Yeah, thank you again, Abby.
Abby, thank you.
I live in town. Get a little chicken noodle.
I'm debating actually, getting some nutrition training.
Yeah.
Tell me what type of programs work here.
Yeah, for sure. So really how it works